So now we might also look at that switch node. So we'll just remove these two. I'll add it onto the true here. So again, we can go into flow and select it, or we can just type in switch and it'll come up. So these are the two main conditional logic ones here. So this one is different by, it is giving you a couple of different modes here. So we've got rules mode, which is building a matching rule here. And then we've got expression. So similar to the edit fields node or the set node, if we've got manual mapping, we get these options here that we can build it out. So same thing with the switch. We can add a routing rule. We can add as many as we want. And so let's just add a couple here. So let's say it's, we'll add the variable in here, string equals, we'll just use contains again, say ES. Generally, I will use and turn on this rename output. And if I don't use it, we'll just turn that off and go out of it. If I don't use it, it just assigns a number of the order, based on the order here of the routing rule. So the next one will be numbered number 1 and so on. It's generally better to turn on the rename output, and we would rename this whatever makes sense. So let's say string is ES. I'll just do it like this. String is ES. No, it's contains, not is. Contains ES. I might put it in characters like that. So now when we go out, you can see that it has a little bit of text there. It doesn't fit in a lot, but if I add another if node, oh no, it doesn't change it there either. So it doesn't add a lot of text there, but it's just enough. So that one's probably too long. So we might say, let's just take out that and just say contains ES. Yeah, so we can see that one there. And then, but if you do, if I add an if node, and yeah, I'm not sure that it makes it any longer. Let's see if it does string contains. No, it cuts it off anyway. So they have to be fairly short so that they're useful. So we would just say contains ES. So that makes it a little bit more descriptive, a bit easier for you to see what is this condition doing or this routing rule. So we might do the same for the other one and say starts with TE. Bring that one in there, and it's a string, starts with TE. Now on this one, we don't get the option per routing rule to ignore the case, but we do get it for down the bottom in the add option, but it's going to ignore it for all of them. So we can see now it's got starts with here, but we can't see the ES, so we'd probably say starts TE so that we can see it there. Now it will, in this case, both of these are true. We've got the first one, the string contains ES, yes it does. And we've also got string starts with, oh, I put TR, let's put it TE. So it's true as well. But what will happen here is it will go to the first one that it finds that's true. So the order is important in here. So if I move this around, put that one to the top by using the drag handle and I test again, it's still going to go to the first one, which is starts TE. That wasn't clear because of the if node was in the way. If I move them back around again, we've got the contains with there, executed again. It's always going to go to that first one because it is order based, depending on which of them is true. So that's important to take into account. And you might have, generally you'll have the condition for the switch looking at the same value and comparing in whatever way you want to compare using the data type. You wouldn't really be looking at this and saying, okay, I'm going to say if the string contains ES, or if the number starts, it's not number here, number exists, equals true. You don't really have different data types when you're using a switch. Again, you're similar to arrays. Generally, whatever data type you're going to have for it, you're going to have, look at the routing rules are going to be exactly the same, and you're comparing the same thing. You're just looking at different values, something like that. Now we do have down here the convert types where required option, which is just going to convert like strings to numbers if it needs to. And then under add option, we've got a fallback option, and we've got send data to all matching outputs. So when I said before, if we have ones that is true, it's going to go through the order. This option here, if we turn this one on, and we go back and we run it, now you can see that this line here is green as well. If we just add another item there. So we can see now any of the items that are considered true based on the previous data or whatever it's looking at, they will all get the output in that case. But that one needs to be on, and it's not on by default. You can see when you add it here, it's off by default. When you add ignore case, it's on by default, I believe. Although let's just double check that. Yeah, it is on by default. So ignore case is on by default, and that applies to all of the routing options. Send data to all matching outputs is off by default, and so you'd have to turn it on if you wanted that. I almost never use that option. I can't think of a single time. I'm sure there is a good use case for it, but I can't remember ever using that option. And then there's the fallback output, which is kind of your default fallback. So if none of them are true, if there's no other option, then the workflow will stop at that point. So if we say ES, instead of contains ES, we'll just say ET, or we'll use the example we had before, ESG. And if the number exists, let's change that to string again, and we'll say starts with, and it's not TE, it's starts with G. So at the moment, and we'll remove this one again, at the moment we're ignoring case for all of them. We're checking to see if the string contains ESG, which it doesn't, and we're checking to see if the string starts with a G, which it doesn't. So we execute the workflow and it stops. You can see these ones are still, the border is the gray, and this is the last green one. So this workflow is going to stop here and it's not going to carry on. So the fallback option, or fallback output, at the moment it's none by default. So same thing, even though I've enabled it, it's still going to stop here. So you have to actually change it to one of these options. So we have three options here. We've got extra output. So items will be sent to the extra and separate output. We might want to choose one of the existing items to say, regardless of whether it's true or not, or not quite that, if you don't find any other item that's true, use this one. So we might say always choose the top route if this one or none of them are true. I generally wouldn't use that one. If I'm going to use this, it would generally be the extra output. And so now when we go back, we have a new third option here, which is fallback. So if we add, let's just duplicate this node here, we've got a fallback option. So now we've still got these two routing rules rather up here, which we know neither of them are true at the moment. We'll execute the workflow, and you can see the fallback route is the one that is the pathway. And so the rest of the workflow will carry on with that. So now let's jump back into the switch. So the other mode we've got to explore is the expression mode. So the rules mode is generally the mode you'll use the most. The expression mode works a little bit differently. If you switch it over, by default, I think it'll usually say 4 in here, and then it will just have an empty object here. We have the converting types again. With the expression here, we set the number of outputs. So if I just execute that as is, what's going to say invalid syntax? Just execute it, yeah. So the number of outputs we've got is 4, but at the moment we have no way, everything's just going to go to output 0 right now because we're not doing any kind of conditional check on anything. So we've got 4 outputs, we'll just change it down to 2. So now we've got output 0 and we've got output 1. So for an expression here, we want to have something like, well, let's use our usual string that we've got. So we've got JSON string. Now we can't just put something in there and expect that it's going to do anything because, again, this isn't a conditional test. So we need to actually check, and then we need to return some kind of data. So it says it here, the output for this output index expects a number, but we got test3 because that's the value of this variable. So what we need to do is a check here. So we can do a simple check and say, check this. Sorry, go back and say, let's see if this equals test3. I use the right characters, test3. Then we have the question mark. So we have a question mark, and we'll say, then we'll do a 0 if it's true, and we'll do a colon there, and we'll do a 1 if it's false. So you can see this went to green because it's now a valid formula, a valid expression. So all we're doing is saying if the variable data in this variable, if the data in this variable is equal to exactly test3, then return 0, which is the true option on this left-hand side of the colon. And if it's not the same, then return 1, which is the false option. So this is going to meet this need for a number to then know which output it's going to go to, because again, this is a 0-based array, so it starts at 0 and goes up from there. So now when we test it, at the moment this is true, so it's sending back 0, so it's an output 0. If we say let's test for test 4, which it doesn't have, it's going to be false, So it's going to return it into output 1. So this is an alternate way you can have, if something doesn't lend itself well to this rules kind of format where you're having an item at a time and you want to have a more complex expression, then you can do that here, and you can make it as complex as you want with any number of outputs. But in order to get access to these 2, 3, 4, this simple expression won't give you that at the moment. So you'd have to make sure that your expression does actually match up to the number of outputs. So here it would have to return a number that's either 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, because it's a 0-based array again. That's pretty much it for the expression mode.